Eat, Sleep, Boxing, Repeat. I'm delighted to be joined, as usual, on a Monday by Greg and Elliot. Guys, how are you?
Good, thank you, mate. Very well, very well. Looking forward to this weekend.
Oh, good, guys. Thank you.
Well, without further ado, we're going to get stuck into the boxing coming this weekend. And I think it's clear to say that the biggest fight is the rematch between Kubrat Pulev and Derek Chisora from the O2 Arena on Saturday night. So, as usual, we're going to look at a main event. We're going to look at an undercard fight and a fight that's possibly gone under the radar. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to the brilliant Elliot Grigg, who's going to talk us through the main event of the weekend.
Certainly, yeah. I'm going to talk. Yeah. So this is obviously Chisora versus Pulev. So heavyweight fight, as Paul said, they're taking place at the O2 this weekend. Not a bad fight, I think. Quite a good fight, and for the reasons I'm going to outline now, and that is that, obviously both men are in decline. They've both fought before. Fought back in 2016 with Pulev getting a split decision on that night over in Hamburg. So that was quite wide on the card. 118, 110, 116, 112. The other one going 113, 115. I think the intrigue here really is the fact that whilst neither of these men have been out and out world heavyweight champions, obviously they've both been European champions, but it's the age essentially that comes into this. You've got Pulev, 41 years old. You've got Chisora, 38 years old. Obviously, the best of their years essentially are behind them, which in many ways for me says that this could draw them closer together and actually make for a good fight. So you've got, obviously, Pulev has lost twice, both stoppages to Anthony Joshua was the first, the second one, most recent in 2020. Lost to Klitschko by the same way back in 2014. Chisora, comparatively, has far more defeats in his record. He's got a record of 32-12. But he's only been stopped 3 times. But then obviously look at it, he's come into this fight 3 losses. So lost twice to Joseph Parker by UD and SD, lost to Usyk before that. All his losses have I suppose you could kind of argue, apart from maybe Caballero, have been around to fighters that are possibly maybe the level above him, which I think is possibly fair to say. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything. I think these, the public, the viewers know quite a lot about these guys. So what actually I'm going to throw to you guys first, by way of questioning, is this. Firstly, a prediction on how you see this fight going, and secondly, with both guys, well, like I said, 38 and 41. Whoever wins, where do they go next? And I'm going to throw that out to you, Gregory, first.
Love how you start with me. It's always me, isn't it? I'm struggling to see past Pulev, if I'm being honest with you. I just think that Chisora looked a bit vulnerable against Parker. Every time Parker seemed to hit him clean, he hurt him. And Pulev hits hard. Pulev gave Joshua quite a few problems. He's been a bit quiet since. So it's a difficult one because Chisora's an absolute psychopath, isn't he? You can see him coming out and just going to war like his thing, and it could totally shock everyone, and just it could be a dog fight. But I just see Pulev maybe having a little bit too much, and if it's a good fight, I think there's always the possibility Chisora comes again, doesn't he? For whatever reason, he'll always be there, I think, until his legs can't literally stand up anymore. If Pulev wins, it's difficult as well because he seems like a kind of guy who's not career focused, Pulev, and like constantly pushing forward. So I could maybe even see him and maybe Joseph Parker or something on Sky. Maybe that's a possibility. I think you'll get yourself into an eliminator for the world title, but I think both guys will slowly fade into insignificance no matter the outcome of this fight. But Elliot, I'm just going to side with Pulev. He's just got a little bit too much class for Chisora, I think.
Paul, do you agree with Greg? Do you think that, are you going to lean towards Pulev? And equally, where do you see the winner going after this fight?
I'm actually going to go the other way, believe it or not. Something's telling me that Del Boy's going to do it. I'm thinking, the first fight was 6 years ago, and I know it was a split decision. But we all know Pulev did win that fight rather comfortably. However, I don't think you can pinpoint it. But since then, I know he's been beaten probably 4 or 5 times since then. The Whites of this world, Usyk obviously, and Parker. But there's just something about Chisora that I just think since then he's almost taken his career more seriously. Do you remember there was a stage when he was fighting like Caballero and then that Monte Carlo, and you were just like, he does not give a toss. Whereas now I think for some reason I kind of get the feeling that he does care a bit more, and I could see him I could see him stopping Pulev. That's the only way he is going to win, in my opinion, is by stoppage. And I could see him landing, like Greg said there, this just biting down on the gum shield, coming forward, slugging it out, throwing mad shots. I could see it being something like the Takam, where he is behind, but then just catches him and gets him out of there, because he is a great finisher when it comes to Chisora. I understand what Greg said about Pulev's got more class, and prime v prime, yeah, you got a favourite. Pulev wins 9 times out of 10, I think, but I just think that this time around they're both old. I actually think Chisora's aged better than Pulev, because I actually wasn't impressed at all with Pulev in the Joshua fight, and then I think he's had 1 or 2 fights since, and he hasn't impressed me at all in them either. And I just think that stylistically, something's telling me that Chisora could stop him in the mid rounds.
Yeah, I think that's essentially.
Hey, can I quickly jump in and say something to Paul, if that's okay, very quickly, because I agree with something Paul said there, and I think it's something that we don't speak about enough. See the change that you said that you've seen there in Chisora, Paul? I think that started with David Hay. I think David Hay changed him. I think he changed his eating habits, his training habits. He even looks better than he's ever looked in his fights. So I think that's an interesting point you make. We maybe I'm being naive. Maybe we're looking at a different Chisora. But I tell you what, it's got us talking, hasn't it?
Sure.
Excellent. So that's where we're going on Saturday night. I think, Paul, we're going to come back over to you now, mate, and introduce what I believe is the undercard fight on you.
Yeah, just quickly looking at, I suppose you could say it's probably going to be the co-main event, and it's Israel and Madrimov and Mikhail Saro are fighting in actually a rematch. You look at Madrimov, and he's 8-0 with 6 knockouts. Saro's 35, 3-1, and actually has 24 knockouts in his 35 wins. Looking at the first fight, Madrimov won it went down as a 9th round TKO victory. But the controversy here wasn't probably the reason that the WBA ordered a rematch, is because supposedly the referee, Nor Madrimov, heard the bell at the end of the 9th round, and Madrimov did have Saro hurt, but then just kept teeing off on him and ended up stopping him. And so something, it does sound pretty ridiculous when you say it like that, but that's supposedly how the first fight went down. I think Madrimov was up on 2 of the 3 cards. The other was either had them level or Saro up, but it was still a close enough fight. Madrimov probably was ahead, but I think that's why they're rematching it. Just although there was controversy, I think Madrimov probably still would have won, but it's just kind of putting it to bed now. And it was originally a final eliminator for their Jamel Charlo and Brian Castano undisputed fight, but obviously Charlo's now won that. So this is supposedly a final eliminator to try and get into a mandatory position for the light middleweight title, the WBA light middleweight title. So yeah, just probably relatively unknown, but Madrimov, one of those fighters who you can tell is being accelerated to world level as quickly as possible. Big amateur pedigree and the likes. So yeah, guys, just want to get your thoughts first. And again, over to Greg.
I think it's a very good fight, Paul. A really good fight, because Saro is more than capable. Madrimov, although he's looking good, he punches hard. He's not exactly set the world on fire. He showed vulnerabilities, and without being too harsh, he's probably taken fights at 6-7 fights in that guys normally wouldn't. But if you're a standout amateur, then I'm sorry, but that's what's going to happen. I'm a big believer on rematches. 9 times out of 10, the outcome never changes. I see Madrimov probably maybe stopping him more convincing this time, or beating him in a more convincing fashion, but I think it's a really good fight. And, like you said, the first fight, it was relatively close. Saro's always capable. He's very compact, but class should probably tell. And I think that usually people learn from their mistakes. And I think that Madrimov will learn, and it'll be a bit more conclusive this time. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Hate and Bellew. I won a fortune on Bellew in the rematch. If you ask me who is the better fighter, who had the better career, I don't even think it's debatable. I think it's David Hay. I think David Hay in his prime was an absolute beast. But timing and styles can make fights, and I was so confident that night, and I'm pretty confident this night that Madrimov is going to do a better job on him.
Yeah, interesting. I think that was a good analysis there from you, Greg. What about you, Elliot? You looking forward to this fight? Do you think it'll go the same way as what Greg said there?
Yeah, good fight. Good fight. Looking forward to it. I do agree with Greg. Yeah, I think rematch. I mean, yeah, obviously the way it ended was fairly controversial, but I don't see Chisora having enough potentially to keep him off him either. I mean, I know he's obviously got the height and reach, but I still just think at some point Matchroom will get to him, and I think he'll stop him. I mean, what was it, 9th round last time? I can see this going somewhere 5 to 7, maybe even 5, fifth or 6th round. Whether he can, like I say, use that reach and height and sort of keep him off for a bit, maybe. But I'm never betting against anyone from Uzbekistan when it comes to fighting. So I'm going to go Matchroom off KO.
Thanks very much. Greg, I believe you were going to outline the last fight that we're going to talk about, the under the radar fight, and we're only saying it's probably under the radar for UK fans,
Yes.
more specifically. But yeah, take it away.
Yeah, guys, this is the best fight this weekend, and I'm counting Chisora, Pulev. And do you know what? This is what these previews are all about, because I'm about to make myself look like an idiot. This fight did go under the radar. I didn't know about this fight until we had a few messages back and forth. Obviously, there's a lot of fights to keep up with, but this fight is an absolute baller. Like, you've got 2 undefeated world champions fighting each other, and one guy has always looked really silky. The other guy has looked like an absolute banger. So something's got to give. The fight I'm talking about this weekend is between Mark Migsaw. I believe he's undefeated. I think it might even be about 24-0 with 22 stoppages. He takes on Ray Vargas, who we know on these shores for beating Gavin McDonnell. I think that fight may even possibly have been for the vacant WBC super bantamweight title at the time. Yep. He's 35-0. I think he stopped 22. He's one of these guys that he's never really been a busy fighter. Ray Vargas, he's kind of dipped in and out of the sport. But sometimes when people are that good, they just think, it's kind of like Gary Russell. I'll maybe fight once a year, make my money, but I don't need to do too much because I'm probably too good and I don't need to. So it's a really, really interesting fight. I think that at the moment, the momentum slightly lies with Mark Migsaw. He might be the next big thing coming out from Asia. But yeah, I just think it's a great fight, guys. If you've not looked into it too much, or anyone watching hasn't looked too much into this fight, this is a real pick'em, because Ray Vargas is capable of boxing his ears off, but you've got to think that the momentum might just be with Mark Migsaw. Both guys haven't been beat, world champions, etc. So yeah, I'm going to come to you guys. I don't know, like, this is the thing. I'm saying it's under the radar. Sometimes I can be a bit of a hardcore, and I didn't even know that this fight was taking place. I'm disgusted in myself, but that's another matter. But really, I'm going to come to you first. Have you seen much of Mark Migsaw? Have you seen much of Ray Vargas? Do you know much about 2 guys other than what I've said?
The fights that stick out for me, no. I mean, the fights that Migsaw saw him fight Gary Russell, and the Ray Vargas fight, Ronnie Rios, one stands out for me. The 2 sort of stand out, the performances I can remember seeing them fight. And to be honest with you, like you, I've done a bit of research before coming into this. And to be honest, mate, I can't really call it. Like, I'm looking at it going, like you say, 250 guys. I mean, there's not a significant amount in stats, looking like 5'10", 5'6", a bit of height, 68 over sort of 70.5 reach. So obviously Vargas being the taller and the rangier guy, but also 31 versus 27. I just can't call it, mate. I think this is a genuine. I'm leaning possibly slightly just towards Vargas, just because I remember that performance against Rios seeming better to me than when I watched Migsaw versus Gary Russell. So that's the only thing I've got going for it. I equally wouldn't be surprised if it went the other way. So I think, like you, mate, I think this is the fight of the weekend. I really do. And it's a 50-50. I don't like sitting on the fence because, some people like to look at us, watch us do this and stuff. I'd have to say, don't put your house on it, but, put your kids' pocket money allowance on Ray Vargas.
That's class, man. I can always count on you. Paul, me and you kind of gel a little bit over the smaller guys in boxing. We love nothing more than a tear-up. I think that's what happens when you're Northern Irish and Scottish. It's just one of them things. That's what we know. What do you think about this fight this weekend? Have you looked too much into it? Do you know, have you got a favourable way that you're going?
Yeah, I think it is. I think what you said there, Greg, about it being the fight of the weekend, I think it's completely fair. Completely fair. Yeah, I think that obviously you mentioned that on UK shores we've more seen Vargas because of the Gavin McDonnell fight, and then Elliot mentioned there the Ronnie Rios fight. Again, great performances there. He had 5 successful title defenses at Super Bantam, moved up to featherweight, had 1 fight, and now he's obviously fighting for the world title here against Magsayo. Magsayo, I didn't really know much of before the Gary Russell fight. I remember doing the betting show with Elliot Stott, and I remember saying, "Oh yeah, Gary Russell points. Never heard of this fella." And then he goes and beats Gary Russell. But the thing I think is interesting in this fight is that Vargas is 4 inches taller. You think of up in the heavier weights, maybe not so much, but see when you're down at featherweight, it'll look like a man against the boy come fight night. Just because 5'10", 5'10" and a half as a featherweight is enormous. The interesting thing as well is, though, although he does have quite a lot of knockouts, Vargas, I don't think he hasn't had one since 2016.
Yeah,
and I don't know whether that's due to inactivity or whatever, but I'm favouring Ray Vargas in this fight. I just think that he's a classier fighter. I've seen more of him, so I don't know. I could be completely wrong. I just being biased because I have seen more of him. But yeah, I think that it is a good fight. I'm looking forward to it. Loved undefeated fights down in the lower divisions. I think we seem to get them more often. But yeah, really looking forward to it.
Fantastic, guys. Well, everyone, that will wrap up our weekly preview. This weekend, we've got Chisora versus Pulev to look forward to. We've got Matchroom versus Soro, and our Under the Radar, which is Mark Megsal against Ray Vargas. Thanks very much for tuning in, watching this show. Check it out on YouTube. Follow all of ESBR's social platforms, and we'll be back to speak to you guys again next week. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.